Episode 1: Making Homes of Logs in the Oak Forest. The township of Rose has amazing natural features, but it also has amazing history. Step back in time to where the history of Rose begins. In 1815, the federal government began to survey the territory of Michigan. As part of that process, the territory was divided into townships, roughly 6 miles by 6 miles. The land that would become Rose Township was surveyed by Joseph Wampler in 1823. He described it in general terms as rolling land with white and black oak. As part of the process, the township was divided up into sections 1 mile by 1 mile. There were 36 of them. But Rose wasn't its own township yet. It was part of Highland Township. It's important to remember that this land, like all the land of Michigan, had been first known to Native Americans. They had known the area for thousands of years. They treasured the lakes and the waterways of what would become Rose, using them as water highways. They deeply valued the oak forests. But by the 1830s, most of them had been pushed away, and people began to purchase land that would become Rose. One of the first people to do so purchased land in sections 11 and 12. His name was John Davis. He happened to be governor of Massachusetts. Now, what was the governor of Massachusetts doing buying land in Oakland County in what would become Rose Township? Well, John Davis was a speculator. Like several people out east, he was purchasing land, hoping to then resell it to make a profit. He, of course, never came to Michigan. 2 other people purchased land fairly soon after in Section 11. They were Jacob Voorhees and his brother-in-law, David Hammond. They were not speculators. They had a different plan. Near their land was a line of timber, and another area of timbered oak, and nearby an area of heavily timbered openings, and the Shiawassee River ran right through their land. Their plan was to build a sawmill. 1836 brought tragedy to the Voorhees family. On July 7th, his wife Hannah died. On October 9th, his youngest child, Andrew, died. And on December 30th, Jacob himself died. So the sawmill was never built. If it had been, the history of Rose is likely to have been quite different. Most likely, a town would have grown up around the sawmill. After all, that's what happened right next door, when the town of Davisburg grew up around the sawmill of Cornelius Davis. The first person to actually purchase land and live on it in what would become Rose Township was Daniel Donaldson, who purchased land in 1835 and quickly, like all settlers did, built a log cabin to live in. He was soon joined by Benjamin Hicks and his family. Soon after, the family of Pardon Hicks, who was Benjamin's son. 1836 brought many newcomers, one of the first being Joseph Wendell. Joseph Wendell had been living in an area of New York, right on the edge of Lake Ontario, so he and his family had crossed Canada, coming into the Michigan Territory. The gravestone of Joseph Wendell, which is located in Rose Center Cemetery, tells not only his story, but the story of so many early Rose settlers. Came from Olcott, New York, made their home of logs in the oak forest on Section 22, Rose, in 1836. Soon after Joseph arrived, his father, John A. Wendell, also came and purchased 3 pieces of land. John Wendell was from an area of New York further to the east, so his family had taken a flatboat along the Erie Canal to Buffalo and then crossed Lake Erie on a steamship. John was soon joined by another son of his, Everett Wendell, and also another son, William, and yet another son, Van Dyke. The Wendells and the Hicks family, early families of Rose Township. But it turned out that the Hicks family and the Wendell family became interconnected because Benjamin Hicks Jr., the son of Benjamin, ended up marrying Elizabeth Wendell, John's daughter. And Benjamin Hicks' daughter, Caroline, ended up marrying William Wendell, thus interconnecting the Wendells and the Hicks family. Another person to move in 1836 was Alva Coffin, but he was connected to the Wendell family because his daughter Marilla had married Joseph Wendell in New York before Joseph even came. Now, why had these families chosen this area of Oakland County, specifically this area of what would become Rose Township? Well, it turns out they had settled along a road. It's a common pattern in Oakland County. Some of the first settlers had come out from Detroit along the Saginaw Trail. That was a Native American trail that had been used for hundreds of years and then turned into a rough wagon road. As settlers came out and chose land along the road, settlements began, like Pontiac and Waterford. As more settlers came, they began to use other old Native American trails, like this one, that was called the White Lake Road after it became a road. That was the road that came through what would become Rose Township. That was the road these early people settled along. And one more person to add, David Gage. He built a small log house on what appears to be a little section of Joseph Wendell's land. And he opened up that little log house as a tavern along the road, so that travelers had a place to stop to get a meal, maybe even spend the night. It wasn't long before he built another house, more substantial, and opened it as a tavern. The stage was set for a town to grow. But wait, Rose wasn't a township yet. When did that happen? How did that happen? Stay tuned. There's more history to come.